Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the suppressed pistol was cold against the back of his neck, but Julian didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to break character now, not when he had spent 6 agonizing months perfecting the trembling, wide-eyed facade of a helpless Omega. "Don't move, pretty thing," the assailant hissed, his breath reeking of stale tobacco and cheap whiskey. "One sound, and I paint this expensive silk with your brains." Julian Mercier, known to the underworld as the White Viper of the Mercier crime family, mentally calculated the trajectory required to snap the man's wrist, dislocate his shoulder, and drive the man's own knife into his throat. It would take exactly 3 seconds. But he didn't move. He let a soft, terrified whimper escape his lips, his hands clutching the lapels of his pristine white suit. He had to wait. If he slaughtered this low-level thug now, the entire operation would burn. He wasn't here to kill a pawn. He was here to dismantle the king. And the king was currently walking through the warehouse doors. "Let him go," a voice thundered, vibrating with the kind of primal alpha dominance that usually made Omegas drop to their knees in submission. Cashin Varnin, the head of the Varnin Bratva, the man Julian had been forced to marry in a fragile peace treaty between their warring families. The man who looked at Julian as if he were made of spun sugar and glass, something precious, beautiful, and utterly incapable of survival without a strong hand to hold it. Cashin stepped into the dim light of the warehouse, his black trench coat billowing around him like the wings of a crow. His eyes, the color of stormy seas, locked onto the gunman with lethal intent. Behind him, his lieutenants fanned out, guns drawn, but Cashin raised a hand. "He wanted this personal," I said. Cashin growled, taking a slow, predatory step forward. "Release my husband, or I will peel the skin from your bones while you are still conscious to scream." The thug's hand shook, pressing the gun harder against Julian's skull. "Stay back, Varnin. I swear to God, I'll kill him. He's soft, he'll break." Julian felt a spark of irritation flare in his chest. Soft, he hated that word. For 6 months, he had played the role of the dutiful, fragile house husband. He poured tea, he arranged flowers, he flinched at loud noises, and he let Cashin carry him over puddles so his shoes wouldn't get wet. It was humiliating. It was necessary. The Mercier family needed to know who was funding the insurrection against them, and the trail led to the heart of the Varnin Empire. Julian was the mole, the perfect, unassuming spy. But the irony was suffocating. Cashin Varnin, the ruthlessly efficient killer, was gentle. At home, in the privacy of their penthouse, Cashin didn't treat Julian like a trophy or a prisoner. He treated him with a terrifying reverence. He remembered how Julian took his coffee. He read poetry aloud because he thought it soothed Julian's nerves. He warmed Julian's side of the bed. It complicated things. It made the knife hidden in Julian's boot feel heavier with every passing day. "He has nothing to do with this," Cashin said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "He is an innocent. A civilian. Look at him. He's shaking." Julian was shaking, but only because he was suppressing the urge to sigh. This was taking too long. "I want a car," the thug demanded. "And 5 million in crypto. Transfer it now." "Done," Cashin said immediately. No hesitation. No bargaining. Just point that weapon away from him. Julian's heart skipped a beat. 5 million was a drop in the ocean for the Varnins, but the speed at which Cashin capitulated was dangerous. It showed weakness. It showed that Julian was his Achilles heel. In the Mafia world, a weakness like that was a death sentence. "You idiot," Julian thought, staring at Cashin's desperate eyes. Asterisk, "Don't bargain for me. Shoot him." Asterisk. But Cashin wouldn't. He was paralyzed by the fear of losing the one thing he thought he had to protect. The thug grinned, sensing the victory. "And I'm taking the pretty Omega with me until I'm clear." "No," Cashin roared, lunging forward. The thug panicked. His finger tightened on the trigger. Time seemed to slow down. Julian saw the tension in the gunman's tendon. He saw the desperation in Cashin's lunge, knowing the alpha wouldn't make it in time. The bullet would shatter Julian's skull before Cashin could bridge the 10-meter gap. The mission was important. The peace treaty was important. But survival was paramount. Julian's eyes shifted. The terrified, watery gaze vanished, replaced by the cold, dead stare of the White Viper. He didn't scream. He didn't cower. Julian dropped his center of gravity, spinning backward into the gunman's guard. His left hand snapped up, grabbing the pistol's slide and forcing it offline just as the weapon discharged. The deafening bang echoed through the warehouse, the bullet tearing harmlessly into the concrete floor. In one fluid motion, Julian drove his elbow backward, shattering the thug's ribs with a sickening crunch. As the man doubled over, gasping for air, Julian swept his legs out from under him. The man hit the ground hard. Before the thug could recover, Julian was on top of him. He didn't use the gun. He used his bare hands. A swift, calculated strike to the windpipe, followed by a precision blow to the temple. The thug went limp, dead before his brain registered the pain. Silence descended on the warehouse. It was heavy, suffocating silence. Julian stood up slowly, straightening his disheveled suit jacket. He brushed a speck of dust from his lapel, his posture erect, his chin high. The trembling was gone. The fragility was gone. He looked up to find 20 guns pointed at him. Not by the enemy, but by Cashin's men. They looked confused, terrified. And Cashin stood frozen mid-step. His hand was still outstretched, reaching for a husband who apparently didn't exist. His storm gray eyes were wide, processing the impossible sight of his delicate flower standing over a corpse, radiating an aura of killing intent that rivaled his own. Julian. Cashin whispered, the name sounding foreign on his tongue. Julian sighed, a sound of genuine exhaustion. He reached down, hiked up his pant leg, and pulled a sleek, black combat knife from the holster strapped to his thigh. He inspected the blade for dust before sliding it back. You were too slow, Cashin, Julian said, his voice dropping an octave, losing the breathy, high-pitched affectation he had used for months. It was a smooth, baritone drawl now. If I waited for you to save me, I'd be dead. Cashin blinked. The shock was slowly morphing into something else. Betrayal? Anger? Arousal? It was hard to tell. You killed him. With your hands. Technically, gravity helped, Julian replied dryly. But yes, he was sloppy. Amateur. Who hired him? Cashin signaled his men to lower their weapons, though they looked hesitant. He walked toward Julian, his movements wary, like approaching a tiger that had been disguised as a house cat. Who are you? I'm the person you married, Julian said, meeting his gaze squarely. No, Cashin countered, stopping a foot away. The air crackled between them. I married a sweet, innocent Omega who cried when he broke a teacup. I married someone who needed my protection. You married a Mercier, Julian said, his eyes narrowing. Did you really think the heir to the Viper clan was raised to be a decoration? I thought you were different, Cashin said, his voice rough. I thought you were safe. I am safe. Julian stepped closer, invading Cashin's personal space, challenging his alpha dominance. I'm the safest thing in this room because I'm the only one who knows how to kill everyone else in it without reloading. Cashin grabbed Julian's wrist. It wasn't gentle this time. It was testing. Feeling the muscle beneath the silk, the tensile strength he had ignored for months. Why lie? Why play the victim? Because, Julian pulled his wrist free with a sharp twist. I needed to know if you were the one killing my people. I needed to see your operation from the inside. And the easiest way to become invisible is to be underestimated. Everyone ignores the weak Omega in the corner. And, Cashin demanded, did you find your killer? I did, Julian nodded. It's not you. How do you know? Because, Julian's gaze softened, just a fraction. I've watched you for 6 months. You're ruthless, Cashin. You're arrogant. But you're loyal. You don't stab people in the back, you shoot them in the chest. The person undermining my family, and yours, is someone who smiles to your face. Who? Your second in command, Julian said, tilting his head toward the door where the lieutenants were waiting. Dmitri. As if on cue, a gunshot rang out from the entrance. A bullet whizzed past Julian's ear, embedding itself in a crate. Dmitri stood at the warehouse entrance, a smoking gun in his hand, flanked by half of Cashin's own security detail, who had turned traitor. Smart boy, Dmitri sneered. I told the boss the Mercier brat was trouble. No Omega moves that quietly. Cashin didn't look at Dmitri. He was still looking at Julian. A slow, dark smirk spread across the Alpha's face. It wasn't the smile of a protector anymore. It was the smile of a partner. a predator recognizing its mate. So, Cashin murmured, reaching into his coat and drawing his twin pistols. No more protecting? Julian produced 2 throwing knives from his sleeves, the steel glinting in the dim light. He stood back to back with Cashin, their shoulders touching. The heat radiating off the Alpha was intoxicating. Try to keep up, darling, Julian whispered. Don't worry about me, Viper, Cashin growled, the nickname dripping with dark affection. Just save some for me. The warehouse erupted into chaos. It was a dance of violence, a ballet of blood. For the first time, Julian didn't have to hold back. He moved like quicksilver, ducking under gunfire, his knives finding gaps in armor and flesh with surgical precision. He was a whirlwind of white silk and red death. Beside him, Cashin was a hammer. He moved with brutal efficiency, his shots echoing like thunderclaps. They moved in perfect sync, covering each other's blind spots as if they had been fighting together for decades, not minutes. When Julian ran out of knives, he used the environment, a chain, a broken bottle, the momentum of his enemies. When Cashin's clip ran dry, he used his fists, shielding Julian from a heavy blow before Julian swept in to deliver the killing strike. It was exhilarating. It was terrifying. It was the most honest moment of their marriage. 10 minutes later, it was over. Dmitri lay gasping on the floor, bleeding from a shoulder wound, the last traitor standing. Cashin walked over, his chest heaving, blood splattered across his cheek. He kicked the gun away from Dmitri's hand and aimed his pistol between the traitor's eyes. Wait, Julian said. Cashin paused, looking back. He betrayed us. We need him alive, Julian said, stepping over the bodies of the fallen. He knows who the external backer is. The rebellion isn't just Dmitri. He's a puppet. Cashin stared at Julian. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the stark reality of the situation. He looked at his husband, really looked at him. Julian's suit was torn, his knuckles were bruised, and there was a smear of blood on his neck. He looked magnificent. You, Cashin breathed, lowering his gun but keeping his foot on Dmitri's chest. You are? Terrifying. Disappointed? Julian asked, raising an eyebrow. He braced himself for the rejection. Alphas didn't like strong omegas. They wanted submission. They wanted softness. He had just shattered Cashin's fantasy. Cashin crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He grabbed Julian by the lapels of his ruined suit and slammed him against a stack of crates. Julian instinctively reached for a weapon, but stopped when Cashin crushed his lips against his. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hungry, possessive, and rough. It tasted of iron and adrenaline. Cashin groaned into the kiss, his hands roaming over Julian's back, gripping his waist, pulling him flush against his hard body. When they broke apart, breathless, Cashin rested his forehead against Julian's. Disappointed? Cashin laughed, a dark, ragged sound. Julian, I have been walking on eggshells around you for 6 months. I was terrified I would break you if I loved you the way I wanted to. Julian blinked, his breath hitching. What? Cashin's hand moved to Julian's throat, his thumb tracing the pulse point. A possessive growl rumbled in his chest. I thought I had a fragile bird. Instead, I have a dragon. Do you have any idea how much hotter this is? Julian felt a flush rise to his cheeks, a genuine reaction this time. I deceived you. We'll talk about the lying later, Cashin promised, his eyes darkening with lust. And the punishment for it. But right now, knowing that you can take a hit, knowing that I don't have to hold back. Cashin bit Julian's lower lip, hard enough to sting. You just became the most dangerous obsession of my life. Julian smirked, wrapping his arms around Cashin's neck, pulling him down. Just remember, Alpha. If you try to cage me again, I'll bite. I'm counting on it, Cashin growled. He turned back to Dmitri, who was watching them with wide, horrified eyes. Now, Cashin said, his voice returning to the icy calm of the dawn. My husband has some questions for you, and I suggest you answer them. Because unlike me, he enjoys his work. Julian stepped away from the crates, rolling up his sleeves. He picked up a discarded knife and tested the edge. He gave Dmitri a cold, beautiful smile. Shall we begin? The interrogation lasted an hour. They got the name. They got the location of the safe house. The threat to their families was neutralized, at least for tonight. Later, in the back of the armored SUV speeding toward the Varnon estate, The atmosphere was thick with unsaid things. Julian leaned his head back against the leather seat, exhaustion finally seeping into his bones. The adrenaline crash was brutal. He felt a heavy, warm coat drape over him. He opened one eye. Cashin was tucking his trench coat around Julian's shoulders. "I don't need coddling, Cashin," Julian murmured, though he didn't push the coat away. "I just took down 12 men." "I know," Cashin said, his voice low. He took Julian's hand, interlacing their fingers. His thumb rubbed over the bruised knuckles of the Omega's hand. "You don't need protection. You've made that very clear." "Then what are you doing?" "Caring for you," Cashin said simply. "There is a difference." Julian looked at their joined hands. The Alpha's hand was large, scarred, and warm. For the first time in his life, Julian realized that strength didn't always mean fighting alone. "You're angry," Julian noted. "I am," Cashin admitted. "You lied to me every day. You pretended to be someone else. You didn't trust me. I couldn't. I know. That's why I'm not stopping the car and fighting you right now. It was war. I understand war." Cashin squeezed his hand. "But the war is changing. If we are to do this, if we are to rule this city, there are no more masks. No more weak Omega. You stand beside me, not behind me." Julian turned his hand over, gripping Cashin's back. "Equals. Equals," Cashin agreed. He leaned in, kissing Julian's temple. "Though I'm still opening doors for you. That's non-negotiable." Julian let out a short, genuine laugh. "Fine. But I handle the knives." "Deal." As the city lights blurred past them, Julian closed his eyes. The deception was over. The game had changed. The viper had revealed his fangs, and the wolf hadn't run away. He had bared his throat. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian drop the mask and take control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who hid his true power from you for 6 months? Or is the deception unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Julian, Omega, wearing torn white suit with bloodstains, holding a combat knife, sharp fierce eyes, white hair, standing confidently, smirk. Man 2. Cashin, Alpha, tall, wearing black trench coat, dark hair, looking at Julian with shock and intense desire, holding a pistol. Background is a dimly lit warehouse with wooden crates, dramatic lighting highlighting the tension, dust motes in air, cinematic composition, intricate details.